All right, 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. Jay Phillips here. Just us today and you, wherever you might be. Appreciate you being with us. Full disclosure, not the Michael Jordan flu game against the Jazz.
Oh, don't dispel that, because I was going to make that joke frequently throughout the show.
Oh, okay. Well,
I was going to make that reference frequently.
But yours truly a touch under the weather and could be progressing towards worse. I admit I am a horrible patient. I'm fortunate. Even with 4 children, I rarely get a cold or the flu. I'm fortunate. Not like that's not a brag.
It's okay to brag on your immune system.
Well, yeah,
it's doing its job.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I try to stay healthy and eat well and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, woke up this morning and knew instantly that any of us, no matter how often you get some type of bug, you know when you've got it. There's that feeling, that like wave that comes over you, or that feeling first. And for me this morning, it was sort of a throat chest thing that progressed, and I got the wave, if you will, about noon. I told Elijah and Terry I work from home in the morning until I get to the office here in the afternoons, and got up from my desk, and it didn't like fall over or anything, right? But I kind of got to like, okay, that's probably not good. Kind of a feeling, Sat back down for a second, collected myself, and I was like, all right, let's try this again. But I'm here.
Hit a mulligan.
I'm
restart.
determined to get through the next 3 hours or so. Got, I don't know, what is this, a quart of water ready to go?
Yeah, quart.
Give or take. Might drink
lots of water, kids.
Might drink all of it.
I would suggest you drink all of it.
But we'll see. But you will hear more of Elijah's voice than mine today, or at least as a percentage. We try to, I guess, I don't know.
We do a pretty good job.
Yeah, we do a pretty good job of splitting this thing up, but maybe a little bit more Campbell heavy by the time we move along. We got some sound.
I do take song requests.
That's right, yeah. Well, you won't hear me singing. We should just hold Tyler in for a bit and just make him come sing. He wasn't here yesterday.
I would love to hear
Actually, Tyler, that's not true. Gunner was not here yesterday. Tyler was here in the building early, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so never mind. Tyler can go home. But we got a lot to get to. SEC spring meetings continue. We got some sound from Commissioner Sankey. More news today. How much of this is trial balloon? How much of this is genuine discussion is sometimes hard to parse and really get hold of. We had a lot of conversation yesterday, and I got a couple of poll questions on Twitter that, one of them, I think, is sort of tongue-in-cheek, but I'll get to them in a second. But yesterday, let me read it again because I don't have the Twitter poll pulled up. But yesterday, I gave you guys this as we left the show. I said, would you rather have 4 automatic qualifiers and harder schedules? This is from an SEC standpoint, and I guess Big Ten as well. But would you rather have 4 automatic qualifier spots and harder schedules, or straight seeding and status quo scheduling? And I'll get you some results in just a minute. I already know what Elijah thinks without him even having told me yet.
I'm going to vote right now.
And then today, we heard that the football coaches, when they arrived, began discussion of a 5+11 model. And that would be what we saw last year with guaranteed spots for the 5 highest-ranked conference champions and then 11 at-larges. Lane Kiffin has gone one farther and just said, hey, just rank them 1 through 16, and wherever you fall, you fall.
Yes.
I don't know if I have a problem with that either. I think what Greg Sankey's big sticking point is, and there's been lots of there isn't an A or B when it comes to the measurement of strength of schedule. It might even be A through Z and then some. Like in an arena when you get like row A and then there's row Z and then there's like row AA.
Oh, yeah, because there's more than 26 rows.
it could be that when it comes to how strength of schedule is viewed. You and I have basically agreed, just to quickly recap how we feel about this, that last year during the playoff discussion that Bama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina remained in the discussion because they had such good strength of schedule numbers, and that there were teams like BYU in the Big 12 or even Missouri in the SEC.
Miami.
Yeah, Miami in the ACC. I think Miami might have been slightly in the discussion, but nevertheless weren't really heavily involved in the final discussion. And that was because, again, those three SEC schools had a good strength of schedule. So, Greg's point on look, Greg Sankey's admitted it publicly. He wants 9 conference games. He still wants the mandated non-con Power 4 game. And I can't quite tell if he additionally or either or wants a Big Ten SEC challenge. So I threw out a poll question on that one too, but you're not going to get the Southeastern Conference to go to 9 conference games, a mandated P4, and again, and or a Big Ten challenge without some form of guarantee that that schedule, when you lose some games, isn't going to keep you out of the playoff, which probably means that we're still going to see games against Murray State and Akron and your FCS schools that everybody plays. I mean, again, Florida the other day they weren't lauding it, mind you, but Florida sends out a press release. Hey, we just announced some home games with FIU and Charleston Southern and somebody else. Who was it?
I have no idea.
But it was, yeah. And
it clearly wasn't memorable. How about that?
Yeah,
if neither of us can summon what team that is
somebody
off the top
else.
of our heads.
Yeah, I can't remember who, but regardless. So I was like, oh, okay, yay, Florida. But I hate those games. I'm sorry. I do. I freely admit it. But I don't know. This is the job of a commissioner, is to try and build that proper consensus that checks every box in some way, and in whatever particular order: financial, competitive, fair, whatever that means.
Yeah.
I guess that falls under competitive in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is ironic, considering one of those ideas that's been floated around was the 4 auto bids. Because here's what would not be very fair to even the better teams in your conference. A 3 seed. Let's say that 3 seed, again, yesterday I used the example of Alabama. Let's just say it's LSU this time, right? Your number 3 team in your conference, they are 10-2 or 9-3, and where in a normal 16-team playoff, they're going to get in, right? It's a no-brainer. Well, they play a 6 seed or your 6 seed or your 6th ranked team, and let's just say it's Auburn. Well, LSU already pummeled Auburn earlier this year. Now they got to play them again. But Auburn gets a lucky break. Weird football stuff happens, and they pull off an upset. And 8-4 Auburn can get into the college football playoff. And if it's 4 auto bids, and you're limiting yourself to 4 because you wanted those guarantees to get in, then you're going to leave out a team that's very deserving over one singular game.
Right.
So it's ironic that in the process of trying to create a playoff system that gives guarantees, you can still keep one of your better teams out. And that's one hypothetical, one example, but this can go many different ways too. I just think the league is really looking for security in some of the wrong places here, when even if you just straight seeded 16 teams, like what Lane Kiffin suggested, you're getting almost half the league in. I think the only way ultimately to sort of do everything that you just said, but at the same time do what I'll admit I most want, which is, again, better scheduling, tougher schedules. I will admit, I want the Power 4 to play only Power 4. Well, then that would make sense with the scheduling, because then every conference is doing it.
Yeah.
That means the Big Ten's playing at least a team from the SEC. There are plenty of ACC teams that on a yearly basis play an SEC team, like Florida State and Florida. sometimes Miami and Florida, South Carolina and Clemson, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Kentucky. But it would also create incentive for the Big 12 schools and ACC schools to also schedule a game against the Big Ten,
right,
or play each other.
No, I'm all for. In fact, I'm for some form of rotation like that.
Yeah, and it creates a large sample size.
Right.
I mean, then you can really look at the end, instead of just using a flat strength of schedule metric, which is oftentimes coming from the back of inter-conference play. Because you play, like, everybody in the SEC is going to have a high strength of schedule, whether or not the teams are as good as the metric indicates or not. It needs to be fueled by some type of non-conference data where it is pitting the Big 12 against the ACC. Or the Big 12 and the SEC. Like, let's just say one year the SEC in their games against the Big 12, because you have a large sample size, sweeps them.
Yep.
Like the middle of the SEC beat the Big 12 champion. Then we can say the Big 12 inter-conference strength of schedule isn't very high, other than just what a computer is assuming would be the case. We would know because we would have played those games on the field. Inversely with the Big Ten, too. I mean, my biggest gripe with the Big Ten is always that it's a really good conference. It's incredibly top-heavy, and the bottom of the Big Ten isn't very good. Well, if we have data that supports that the Big Ten in 2025 had to play games against the SEC, Big 12, and ACC and had a losing record out of that, then we could even say the Big Ten, their strength of schedule numbers can be a little skewed. We get more context, and then you're more easily able to identify what the 16 best teams are instead of having to parse through how good a team is with game control metrics or anything else you could still use to supplement your arguments. But you're doing so against all Power 4 competition and not just a couple of inflated numbers because you beat a Western Illinois by 60-plus points.
Yeah. I mean, I've already got somebody here who's hit me with a YouTube video of the Carolina Citadel game from a couple of years ago. I'll get to that in a second. I get it, y'all. The Citadel beat South Carolina. Okay. I get it.
Yeah, happened.
I get it. It happened. It doesn't mean they need to be on the schedule anymore. Okay? It doesn't. They beat them. The Citadel beat South Carolina. I'll tell you, one of the worst days I ever had at Williams-Brice Stadium. I'll tell this real quick. My 20th birthday. I'm in college. This was back long. I mean, obviously, Elijah, you weren't even born yet.
Nope. Not around.
And this was back, many of you that are old enough remember when you could park around the apron of Williams-Brice. And my Uncle Tom and his wife, my Aunt Sissy, had one of those parking spots. They were great people. Rest in peace to both of them. My Uncle Tom was a Purple Heart recipient. I don't want to say winner.
Recipient is more appropriate.
Recipient from World War II, and he graduated from the Citadel. And, again, it was my 20th birthday. Now, I would often stop. I was in college, and as I said, I would often stop and see them and just say hey on my way into the ballpark, right, on game days. Maybe get some food, whatever Aunt Sissy might have had that day or something. So I did that going in, like, hey, you know, have fun, yes, Citadel, you know. Everybody expected Carolina was a bad Gamecock team. At least not a very good Gamecock team.
Right.
And I forget the score. I think Citadel won like 38-35. And it was just back and forth, right? And finally, the Citadel just kind of had the ball last and won. Game's over. I go back down. I make the mistake of going back to see them. And my Uncle Tom enjoyed himself some Old Granddad. Oh. Those of you who know what Old Granddad bourbon is.
Very nice.
And he gets right up in my grill, kind of like Tyrese Halliburton's dad.
Oh, no.
To Giannis the other day. How about them Bulldogs, boy? And I mean, my Aunt Sissy is about 5 feet behind him, looking at me as he is, you know, berating me to some degree. And she just shakes her head like, I'm so sorry he's doing that to you. And I just moved on.
You just have to take it.
I did.
You have to take it.
So I get it. Sometimes you lose, but it doesn't mean FCS teams should be on Power 4 schedules anymore. And I'll come back around to the poll questions for you. Lots to do today. Again, lots going on at the SEC meetings. Got a few baseball notes to touch on as well. It's the Wednesday postgame show. Griffin Pools and Spas ready to help you and your family out when it comes to taking the backyard up, another level, maybe a few levels, right? Listen, in-ground pools in so many different styles to choose from, or maybe it's just a nice, relaxing spa or hot tub, or maybe both. Get in to see the folks at Griffin. They're just steps away from the Lake Murray Dam in Lexington. They've been doing this across the Midlands for decades now, just turning people's backyards into that, that vacation getaway that you always love to have right there without having to go to the resort, right? Plus, if you've already got a pool, then all the accessories that you need to keep everything looking good, clean, having the fun time with the kids, whatever it is that you need when it comes to pools, whether it's brand new construction or keeping it running, Griffin Pools and Spas in Lexington, ready to help you out. Tell them we sent you in there and see what they can do for you. Change that backyard forever with Griffin Pools and Spas. All right, welcome back in. Postgame show rolling on. Who knows what I'm going to say today? I don't take cold medicine, so I'm not loopy or anything, but I am a little under the weather. But no cold medicine. R.I.P. Tommy Moody. No Tommy Moody cold remedy, which is basically just like brown liquor and honey and lemon, which I'm sure
proven to work.
It'll help. But not while I'm on the air. I don't like
put some
taking
hair in your chest too.
I told I told Terry I don't like taking like anything with the like Sudafed or any other pseudoephedra type products because I feel like I'm like a step behind myself.
Yeah.
When I'm talking and like, what did I just say? Or something like that. And listen, I do enough of that when everything's just perfectly fine to begin with. So when it's not, I never listen, I'm not Mr. Hot Take. I'm not Mr. Push your buttons just to get a reaction from you type host. In fact, I feel like I'm almost the opposite of that in a typical sense. Nothing against those who just want to push your buttons and get a reaction. But I do understand that when I'll read it, when I say some of these things, it does get some of you to react negatively. And again, I've already had somebody hit me on this and send me a clip of the Citadel game from 10 years ago. I get it. I get it. Sometimes you lose. But I've also looked it up, Elijah, and I know I'm kind of dancing around it, but I'll get to it. I believe that, like, since 1980, the winning percentage of formerly AA teams, now FCS teams, against like FBS teams is like maybe 7%, and then when you extrapolate it into like the power conferences against those, it's less than 4%. The point I make is they're rarely competitive. And I'll use this example before I read what I said. And I got 3 things to read here. I don't have to take you guys too far back. I mean, if you want to remember this, listen. And listen, to all my friends who went to the Citadel, I was proud of you that day. Good for you. That was a crap Carolina team whose head coach had literally quit on them in the middle of the season. And they were just trying to find their way. And one of the better Citadel teams that was led by a kid who ended up playing for the Green Bay Packers.
That's a good football team.
It was a good day. It was a good day. You should celebrate it. All right, I've seen 3 losses to FCS teams since in games at Williams-Brice, 2 against Citadel and 1 against Furman. It happens. We all know App State, when they were still AA, beat Michigan. We get it. There's others.
My favorite upset in the history of college football.
Didn't Eastern Washington beat Oregon or somebody?
1 year, yeah. I think maybe when Cooper Kupp was there.
I can't remember, but it happens. But it doesn't happen. And again, most of the time it happens against teams, that are more like your Kansases, like North Dakota State beating Kansas or North Dakota State beating Nebraska or something like that. But anyway, it's the 2019 season here. That was a bad South Carolina football team. They won 4 games total. One of the 4 officially was a 62-point victory over Charleston Southern. And let me just say again, I don't even want to talk about Charleston Southern anymore, other than to say that was a bad South Carolina football team. What good does that game do anybody, is my question. And I mean, it was, the stands were 2/3 full. Yeah, TV, it's on the internet. Right? No, TV doesn't want that.
Right.
It's certainly not going to be on ESPN2 or even the U.
SEC Network Plus.
No, yeah, it's all internet based. But I threw this out, because I told Elijah, here's what I'm talking, and I'm coming back around to the SEC meetings and just what the future of the schedule looks like inside the conference and how that may impact what the college football playoff looks like as we move forward. And I said, as a college football fan, what I most want is better scheduling nationally for all Power 4 schools. No more FCS games, and at most, only 1 against the group of 6. Play each other, set up non-con challenge weekends, and create more compelling games. Harder? Yes. Better? Yes. The college football playoff then takes care of itself. And at that point, I would absolutely, I'm already basically in favor of what Lane Kiffin said. But I also understand why the automatic qualification spots are a real point of contention at this point. It is not, I am not here to disrespect FCS schools. They have great football. It's fun to watch. I'll watch their playoffs. I have, again, tons of friends, just like you, Elijah, that, I mean, I got friends that went to Wofford, went to Furman, again, went to the Citadel, whatever. I have a buddy that played at PC. I get it, man. I get it. I'm not here to disparage. But I'll say again what I've said to you many times. You don't see NFL teams dropping down to play, as you pointed out, a USFL team or an Arena League team. And you may say, well, Jay, it's a little bit different. Sort of.
But they do play for different championships.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the point of contention here, or the point you can make where it doesn't make a ton of sense to play them, is because you do technically play in completely different leagues because you're competing for different titles. Like playing a group of 6 school is different because the group of 6 does have representation in the college football playoff.
Right.
So I can understand.
And had access to the BCS technically and to the CFP
yep. So,
technically.
And you're playing for the same things overall, right?
Right.
In the NFL, everybody plays for the right to try to win a Super Bowl. It does make a sense if the NFL team does take a break in the schedule to play a Canadian League team, because the Canadian Football League plays for a different title. They play for the Grey Cup, right? The Grey Cup and the Lombardi Trophy.
With an
two
E.
different things. Yes, Grey. Yes, if you're trying to Google it, it's not Gray, Grey, but highly recommend doing it. You'll find some interesting lore and some fun facts about the fun Canadian Football League. But that's kind of the same. That's where the analogy has a lot of legs, right? Is because you're playing for different titles. And really, college football is the only sport where that happens, because in college, baseball, basketball, volleyball, insert sports here, everybody in Division I plays for the same title.
Yeah, that's Division I.
It's Division I, and they're playing for the Division I national championship, ultimately at the end of the year. You don't really see in hardly any other sport where regular season games count against teams that play for completely different titles.
And I had somebody also just hit me now and say the smaller schools need it for the money. Again, I understand that too, and that's why for several years now, I'm not sure how long I've been doing this, years, I've advocated for those in-state schools, whatever state they may be in, that are FCS, that play against Power 4 schools, to come play the spring game. We've heard here in Columbia, Coach Beamer is in favor of a real spring game. All right, have a rotation. Have a rotation of State and Furman and Wofford and Citadel, and they roll through Columbia and they roll through Clemson, and Mercer and whoever else, and Valdosta State can go to Athens and Atlanta, and on I can go, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And then everybody wins. But again, there's nothing competitive about those games by and large. And like I say, if you want to be the smartass who throws the outlier in my face, okay, because it's sports and sometimes you lose. But even look at why that South Carolina team ended up losing to the Citadel. They had about as much interest as being there as they did about having a root canal with no Novocaine.
Fun.
Yeah. I mean, that's just where that team was then. And you can say whatever else you want about it. And like I say, tip my cap. You won. Good for you. Doesn't mean you need to play the game anymore. And I'll hold to that. I've also put this out there for you, a couple of poll questions. First one, there are several proposals being discussed when it comes to future SEC football schedules and the CFP format. Assuming there will be 16 in the CFP, which of these two would you prefer? A, straight seating in the CFP and 8 conference games, or B, 4 automatic spots with 9 conference games. Right now, 50, let's call it 59 to 41, say 8. So they want 8 plus status quo scheduling.
If I had to choose between the two, yeah, I think I would do the same.
And then the other one I have today, assuming each school was scheduling under the same rules, would you be in favor of the P4 conferences only playing football games against each other, both in and out of conference? A, yes, more competition, or B, no. I also like cupcakes, because I like cupcakes.
They're delicious.
But I don't want them on my football schedule.
I just want them in my belly.
But right now, no, I also like cupcakes at 55. I'll round up 55%, 55-45. Take it as you will. More of the Postgame Show coming up. Talking the future of SEC scheduling, SEC meetings going on in Destin, Florida this week. Football coaches discussing several proposals. Will the SEC remain at 8 conference games? Will they go to 9? If they go to 9, will there be some acceptance of strength of schedule being very difficult in the SEC? Will there be automatic qualifiers in the college football playoff? Do we go to a 5+11 model? Lane Kiffin proposing just rank them and play them. I don't know.
Which, have you seen what the bracket would have been this year?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did you see? Yeah.
Andy put it out. It would have been wonderful.
Yeah, Carolina would have played Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been spectacular.
I would have loved to have seen that
matchup.
matchup.
Spectacular. Just because you get the chance, right? You get the opportunity. Again, I'm not going to say the guy's name because he's hiding behind a moniker, not his real name. But clearly this guy went to the Citadel. Again, I'm not, y'all, if you went to the Citadel, if you love the Citadel, you got family that went to the Citadel. I just mentioned I had 2 uncles that went to the Citadel, actually. I'm not dogging FCS schools. So don't put that on me. I'm being as open and honest with you all as I can be. But Elijah furthered my point. Yeah, you do. These schools play for 2 different championships. They're not in your league. And not only that, but in an age where the biggest schools are more than ever being forced to maximize every revenue stream. When you see empty seats, thousands of empty seats at those kind of games in the fall, that tells you a lot. You need to fill your ballpark. You need to sell more expensive tickets. You need to sell more Cokes and popcorns and hot dogs and beers and have kids buying T-shirts. That's you want television to pay you maximum value for your inventory. That's what this is about now. And those games don't do that. Nor do games, honestly, Elijah, as you know, against, even the MAC. Or whatever. And again, I think the MAC plays good football.
They do, especially on Tuesday nights.
Right. Maction is it's a thing.
Yeah,
man.
It's fun.
So I get it, man. I'm not here knocking it. It's good football in the FCS, but you play for another title, and there's more than enough evidence to prove how typically uncompetitive those games are. They are glorified exhibitions, meant to just give you a bonus win. But if you can do something about not having to worry about being undefeated or having that bonus win, and you can absorb a couple of more losses and still have an opportunity to play for a title. Again, that's part of the thinking here. We've got to get rid of the old way of thinking that only undefeated or one-loss teams are worthy of winning a college football championship at the highest level. And that it's not the 80s anymore.
I think there's still something to be said, too, about not losing to bad teams as a deterrent as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Like a lot of ADs that spoke yesterday, I think that's the point they missed. And we keep using the Alabama example, and it's, look, you're going to play teams that are 500 in your league, and you're going to play teams that are bad in your league. Like the SEC, as great of a league as it is, had some bad teams. The Big Ten as well. They had some more bad teams. They had some atrocious teams. Purdue went 0 for FBS last year.
Yeah,
but you know what would have happened if Ohio State played Purdue and lost? They probably would have been kept out of the college football playoff.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd dinged you.
That's a league game, right? And that's why Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Don't lose to Vanderbilt. Don't lose to Oklahoma. And this is not your father's
and
Oklahoma team.
Oklahoma whooped them.
24-3.
Yeah.
They scored 3 points.
Whooped them.
Jalen Milroe had
that Vandy game was fun, at least,
Yeah, and you know what? I'll even give you the Vanderbilt one because it was such a close game and it was lost within some really tiny margins. But you played a 6-7 Oklahoma team who ended up losing their bowl game to Navy.
Yeah,
and you got run out of the building. You just got completely waxed. And I think the thing here is, like, I think people are willing to accept a team that wins a title with 2 or 3 losses. I think it's just a harder pill to swallow to allow a team in if they have multiple bad losses and getting in on something like brand recognition, which is what the SEC was banking on Alabama doing.
Yeah.
Because those are hard losses to defend. I guarantee you if the shoe was on the other foot and Ohio State went 9-3 but lost a close one to Michigan, good. Lost to number 1 at the time, Oregon, on the road, a completely acceptable and normal loss that is never going to ding you.
Right.
But then let's say you lose one to Northwestern. Purdue's an extreme example. But let's say you lose to Northwestern. Northwestern wasn't any good. But you lose to a team like Northwestern. That can be a disqualifying loss. I'm with you, where college football around the board is all across the board is just so much better, where I don't believe 2 or even 3 losses should be disqualifying. But I do believe in a disqualifying loss because that happens in college basketball.
At some point, and that comes around to what we say about, like, we can go back to Carolina a couple of years ago in men's basketball. Like the loss to Wyoming or a loss to Stetson. It's like you just can't. You
can't have those losses.
You just can't. This year we thought that maybe that North Florida loss was going to be an albatross. It ended up not mattering, but
and if it was close, it would have been because of how close the margins were with the SEC getting 14 teams in. If they were, to say, on the bubble with Texas, right, and it comes down to South Carolina and Texas, even if you beat them in the regular season, but you have 3 fewer conference wins than a team like Texas would, they're going to look at the best wins and the worst losses, and your loss to North Florida would instantly stick out like a sore thumb.
Albert hits us on Twitter. He said, I like playing a mid-major or double-A game. Every week doesn't need to be an insanely hard opponent. No, it doesn't. And it won't be. Even if you did all Power 4, it wouldn't be. Again, there's still teams, as Elijah just pointed out, that are not good. And in any given year, you don't know who's going to do what. I mean, some teams will surprise you, and up or down, some teams will surprise you. And he says those teams mean a lot to fans and alums. He says, I think it's and then I said to him, that's why I mentioned spring games. He said, I think that's a feasible avenue. I just always like those games existing, especially as it relates to in-state schools. So many families with alums of Carolina and Clemson, in addition to other state schools. It's always been fun for discussions, family functions, et cetera. It is. I don't disagree with that. I will say again, though, I think from 1992, when South Carolina joined the conference, until FBS football went to a 12th regular season game, South Carolina didn't play an FCS opponent, except for 2001, when the Bowling Green game was canceled because of the 9/11 attacks, and that game could not be rescheduled, and Wofford and Carolina had a hole in the schedule that matched up, and the Terriers agreed to come down to Columbia and play at Williams-Brice. So there was a near 20-year stretch where South Carolina, and I'm just using South Carolina, and I'm trying to talk about the entire nation, but we focus on South Carolina here, obviously. But there was a near 20-year stretch where the Gamecocks didn't play those games. So when people tell me, oh, they always have, no, they have not. And it was just easier when you added the 12th game to just say, well, let's just do it in state. And for a little bit of time, that made some sense. But now, in an era, again, where we're trying to maximize revenues, or better yet, create entirely new streams of revenue, FCS football games against Southeastern Conference, Big Ten, ACC, that ain't going to cut it. Not the way you need it to. It's just not. Again, I'm not trying to smack anybody around here. I'm not trying to sound elitist. I'm being a realist about what the future is going to have to look like. When you are dealing with Disney and Fox and CBS and NBC and whomever else, they don't want those games as part of the inventory they carry, whether it's over the air on a broadcast network, whether it's on cable, satellite, streaming, they don't want that. They want why do we think the NFL is growing by leaps and bounds the way it is? Because no matter what, you're getting an NFL game.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, like that's the thing. It takes out a lot of the controversy with your postseason too. If you limit the amount of schools that can play each other, you just get a naturally larger sample size. Like we can complain, and we still will complain about what a committee ranks. At the end of the day, that's just part of sports, and not everybody's going to be in total agreement on the correct 16 teams into the field. But when you have more to work with in terms of determining who the best 16 are, you take them. You take more information, not less. Because you just want to be able to paint a picture as how good everybody actually is, and you can skew a lot of things by scheduling some of these games that we've been talking about.
Come back on the other side. Elijah has created a new segment for us where he taps into my hopefully decent memory banks of Gamecock athletics. We'll see what happens on the other side. It's the Postgame Show. Yeah, not my intent, but got a couple of you fired up about FCS schools. Again, I'm not disparaging FCS schools or their football programs when I say what I say. I please believe me. I know some of you just don't want to, but I'm really not here to disparage you at all. It is not at all my intent. But a couple of
Let the hate flow through you.
Not that. I'm not the emperor. Let's see what Dan has to say. He's up next. Dan, you fired up too? How are you?
Not about that. I think we need to. If we go to 9 Southeastern Conference games, you add a loss, 7 losses to Southeastern Conference teams. Okay, that knocks some people out of some bowl games. Okay, you go to, like you were talking about, 12 big boys playing football. You will have 6 home and 6 away. Now, you tell me the finances on how you lose 2 home games, and that does not affect your bottom line a bunch. You also said that, and I think we sell most of the tickets, even if people don't show up for the Citadel, the whoever. And you talked about concessions. Brother, I've known retailers, and I've been in the retail business some. When you make people stand in line, as long as those clowns do at the concession stands down at the university, you lose money hand over fist. Now, I don't drink beer at the ball games, but people that drink beer that go up there that have to stand in line for a quarter, there's got to be a better way. They leave more money on the table from their concession stands than the law allows.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the loss of money to the community when you lose 2 home games. The loss of money to people in the service business that need that work. You need to think about them. You also need to think about the kids. You play 12 big boy football games in a year, and you play a conference championship game, and you play in the playoffs. That is not fair to the student athlete. They are not thinking about the student athlete, period.
Well, I don't know about the word fair. I mean, if the kids sign up for it, Dan, then they understand what they're signing up for.
That's why you play in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, you come to the Southeastern Conference to play big boy football. So you don't come to the Southeastern Conference to step down a couple of times. Listen, I see your point, and thank you for the phone call. There may be some logistical things that need to be worked on in terms of home games. Maybe in certain years you flip-flop a few around. I think more than anything, what this could do ultimately, because this is not the kind of thing that gets implemented, in 2 years. For one thing, the Southeastern Conference television deal, I think, doesn't run out until 2032, something like that. Maybe even 2034. It's a pretty long deal. At that point, you are renegotiating with your television partners. And by then, what is television going to even look like when it comes to who's paying for what? By then, that mountain of cash that Apple is sitting on is probably going to be going towards live sports. Netflix is already starting. They're sitting on a mountain of cash. They got to spend it somewhere. They want better inventory. And if you can make up for some of these things through better inventory and revenue into your school, into your conference, then that becomes a wash. In terms of concessions at Williams-Brice, that is one of the things that Jeremiah Donati has said will be acted upon. There's already an acknowledgement that it's not good enough, so they're working on those things as well. Plus, the premium seating they're adding is going to bring a lot more revenue directly in to the Carolina football program. So they are working on those revenue streams. Hour 2 coming up. 4 o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back in. Second hour of the Postgame Show coming at you. Herndon Chevy Studios is where we are. We are Elijah Campbell. He's over there.
What's up?
Jay Phillips here. Excuse me, a little bit under the weather, but I'm here.
What's over the weather feel like?
Good.
Like real good?
Yeah. Probably how my Uncle Tom felt after Citadel beat Carolina in 1990.
And let you hear all about it.
Bulldogs, boy. There you go. So all you Citadel people, there you go.
It's still
One of your own.
etched into your memory.
One of your own.
Forever.
Dude,
Forever.
forever. My mistake. My mistake. And I was just going by to be a good sport.
You were.
Oh, that's all I was doing. And again, I can still see, as much as I have my Uncle Tom right in my grill, again, 5 feet behind him, his dear wife, my Aunt Sissy, again, R.I.P. to both, looking at me and just shaking her head like with apologetically, like, I'm sorry he's doing this to you. I don't know that she was sorry that Carolina won or lost. I don't know. I think she went to Converse. I don't think she cares. And she still loved her husband.
I will say that if I went to, let's say, because MTSU started the season at Alabama a couple of years ago, if I was just in attendance and MTSU won that game, I might need witness protection for what would go down in that stadium.
But again, if you've just tuned in, this is not the first time, nor I suppose will it be the last, where I have, not intentionally, nor would I say inadvertently, and I'm not here to push buttons. I'm not that guy, but I have made the point again today that I've made many times. I do not believe that as we move forward with major college football scheduling, that FCS teams should be on schedules. And it's ironic to me, too, in terms of how many things I've seen on Twitter through the years. You have, too. And I'm sure this is on, other message boards and places. I don't do the message boards, and I don't just mean here locally. I mean nationwide, as I say, coast to coast and border to border. Of how much flack the SEC seems to get from other conference fans about having, typically, Elijah, that weekend in November. Mm-hmm. Where it's almost exclusively FCS teams. Not all, not completely across the board. And yet the Southeastern Conference still typically rates as a conference, certainly highest in strength of schedule. And its member institutions more often than not have the bulk of, say, the top 25, strength of schedule strengths. And again, I'm not here to disparage. I'm not here to take shots. And like I said, one guy, instantly, I say instantly, but at some point here pretty quickly hit me with highlights of the Citadel beating Carolina 10 years ago. Again, it's sports, and sometimes you lose. I know how to put that specific afternoon into context. It happened. Good for you. And any other teams like that win. I mean, help me out. Will Muschamp got beat by Georgia Southern, right? Maybe when they were still AA down at Florida.
He did. Yeah, I think he did. Or Jim. I don't know if it was him or Jim McElwain.
I was thinking it was Muschamp, but I could be. Anyway, And again, the most famous one is Michigan losing to App State before App State moved up to FBS.
My favorite fact of that game. That was the first ever football game live broadcasted on the Big Ten Network.
Wow.
First one.
That is a thing. So, again, I'm not here to take shots. I'm not here talking specifically about South Carolina's schedule. And, we just heard from a caller who doesn't, wants to play a couple of step down games. Okay. I mean, I don't know where we'll fall. I'm giving you my opinion. Y'all are giving me yours, and I'm not saying we have right or wrongs here. The one point that I think might actually have been most valid from the last caller might be how the college towns, whether they're size of Columbia or Knoxville or Baton Rouge, or whether they're the size of Clemson, Auburn, and Starkville, handle what could potentially be one less home game a year. I'll give you that. Now, some schools are already doing it when they give up a home game for a neutral game, but they get a bigger payout to the school and things like that. I imagine Columbia would be able to absorb that and not miss too much from it. I understand, and nobody has to tell me what a game day in Columbia means to Columbia. I've been doing it a long time. So I get it, 100%. I get it, but it's not the. And look, I'll even say, I'm not going to say that I personally am being hypocritical when I say this, although it may come across that way, because I have, Elijah, as you know, talked before about what a missed opportunity it was when the late Dr. Mike McGee denied the Carolina Panthers the opportunity to use Williams-Brice for a season and what that could have done for Columbia and for his school, but he didn't see it that way, and it didn't happen, and instead he shoot him up the road to Clemson and helped Clemson out and helped the upstate out. So I get that there's a benefit to that. At the same time, one fewer home game over the course of however many years, isn't going to be detrimental to Columbia. Now, again, a Starkville or an Auburn may feel a little bit differently about that. I don't know. But even when you go to an Auburn game, you're staying. You can't really stay in Auburn. There's only a couple places to stay in Auburn. You can stay in Opelika a little bit, and a lot of people stay in like Columbus and drive over. So.
Well, there are ways, too, to be able to create other events. I mean, these stadiums, all of these stadiums, even like your Mississippi States, have stadiums big enough to hold things like concerts, to hold a spring football game against one of those FCS opponents, where you can recreate a game day in late April and be able to, honestly, do what we've talked about, schedule somebody to play there, have your ones out there for like a quarter, but still be able to bring in people, make money that way. And we saw exactly what it did for the town to bring in an event like Manchester United Liverpool. Not saying you can get something like that every year, but like there are concerts like all across the Southeast United States. I see so many videos of football stadiums being used as concert venues. Like I just saw like one of the coolest videos I've come across was Metallica playing Enter Sandman at Lane Stadium in Blacksburg, Virginia for a concert. And guess what they made? A ton of money. Like there are ways that you can.
Well,
I understand the concern.
Call on me.
Yes, Jay Phillips.
I saw Metallica at Williams-Brice Stadium.
Ah, see, and you know what? I bet that did.
Made me a lot of money. You know who was with him? Guns N' Roses.
Ooh, nice.
I saw Paul McCartney at Williams-Brice Stadium.
Oh, that's sick.
Saw the Rolling Stones at Williams-Brice Stadium.
You've seen a lot of good concerts.
Saw U2 at Williams-Brice Stadium. That's what they need to do more of. And so to that last caller's point, I think Dan was his name. I understand what you're talking about there. I live here too, and I've lived here. Again, this isn't a brag, but I often say this to make a point. I'm now pointing to the north. I was born 2 blocks from here.
Walking distance.
Yeah. So I get it. I get it. And I want this city to do, and to the point you just made, the best, not the best one you made, but the biggest one, again, having Liverpool and Man United come in. I mean, way to go, Chance Miller and Ray Tanner and staff for pulling that off. And now Jeremiah understanding that happened. It wasn't a pipe dream. It happened.
Nope. Yep.
You've now can prove almost globally, look who we brought in and look what we pulled off. And really, the main reason there was a traffic snarl is the rain after the game and the fact that a bunch of people, the secondary is that it was a bunch of people that didn't really understand the traffic flow. But even that wasn't that. I mean, I've stayed in traffic about that long after a Carolina-Clemson or a Carolina-Georgia game or a Carolina-Tennessee game.
A Carolina fair game, right? I've never sat in a traffic jam worse than leaving the stadium after the Florida game in 23 when the fair was also in town. Yeah. And I think that was after being at the stadium for the press conference and doing all the post-game work. I mean, I left that stadium about an hour and a half after the game ended, and I still sat in traffic leaving it.
So, I mean, that happens when you put that concentration of people in a small area, even if it's an area that has plenty of outlets like Williams-Brice does. So I think there are ways to literally make up for what could potentially be one weekend of fall that is no longer a home game, whether it's at Carolina or Georgia or Clemson or in Chapel Hill or wherever. I think more and more places. Now, some might not be able to absorb it as much. I don't know. But again, can you make up for that with increased revenue into the conference because of the television inventory? I think the answer to that is also a yes. I mean, you might not get the Rolling Stones to play Starkville. I get it.
Big ask.
I get
a very big ask.
But what if you? But you
Sure,
know,
Garth Brooks would love to.
But I was going to say, I mean, it might not be. It might not be a rock show. You know, and look, the Stones aren't going to do a whole lot more touring. But yeah, I mean, why couldn't you get Garth Brooks or Kenny Chesney or Morgan Wallen or whomever to go play the SEC Stadium tour? You could.
Yeah,
you could.
They do it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, Kenny Chesney's played here. I think he's played here a couple times.
Yeah, Kenny Chesney loves playing in college football stadiums.
You know, I mean, Beyonce was here. She's on a stadium tour right now.
You have a stadium, you can be part of a stadium tour.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
And it's better when you have more amenities, which Carolina is getting ready to add to Williams-Brice. It's a lot better when you are able to divert more traffic more quickly. And again, Carolina can do that relative to some college stadiums. So I understand it. But again, more than anything else, I'm looking at it as a football fan. And that's where I'm coming from. Again, this has nothing to do with where I went to school or where I grew up. I'd be saying this if I was doing a radio show in Boise or Albuquerque or L.A. or whatever.
Lobos.
You know, yeah, I'm here. And again, I think Elijah earlier, I think you made a kick-ass point when it comes to what I'm trying to sum up when it comes to FCS. They play for a different championship. They're in a different level. They're literally not in your league. That's not disparaging. It's a fact. And that, as much as anything, and again, the winning percentage against Power 4 schools for FCS schools is less than 4% since 1980. It's not a competitive game. And I go back to one example. If y'all want it, for those of you who want to use the Citadel win or either Citadel win. Now, the first Citadel win, 1990, that was not, I say first, but in the modern era. Carolina was not yet in the Southeastern Conference that day. And then 8 years prior, Furman and again, what did 1982, 1990, and 2015 have in common with Carolina football? They were crap seasons. Okay? Sorry.
I can imagine.
I was there.
When you have those losses on those schedules. Yeah, I can assume the rest of the season didn't go swimming.
I was there. One year I was in the 5th grade. 1 year I was a sophomore in college, and 1 year I was doing this for a living. They were all crap seasons in a relative sense.
No fun for anyone.
They were not, man. That 82 year. Oh God. All of them, man. I can think of a lot of things. And then Sean, you know, for 2015, though, Sean picked them up off their rear end and actually had them playing Clemson really hard for 50 minutes.
That guy could get me to play Clemson really tough for 50 minutes. You see that guy on the sidelines? Yeah. He's animated. That guy could get me to run through a brick wall.
All right, speaking of the Gamecocks, we were going to get to this in the last segment, but we didn't get a chance to. So Elijah is going to quiz me. Speaking of all those memories I have, let's see if I can conjure up some fact from back in the day when it comes to, and I have no idea what we're going to do when it comes to a Carolina event, but Elijah does, and you'll find out when we return. 18 minutes after 4 o'clock on this Wednesday. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you. Get back into some of our poll questions. Got a few of them running. We got Jay or Nay a little bit later on, and Jay versus the internet. There's a lot of stuff going on today.
There is.
And I'm trying to keep a level head. Again, I'm a little under the weather, and I've gotten some of y'all fired up, which I suppose indirectly has me not on edge. What's the word I'm looking for? Just not fired up either. Just, I guess, I don't know. I don't know the word I'm looking for. Because again,
I don't either.
But just, I gotta sometimes
Got you going a little bit.
Well, and sometimes I'm gonna say something that some people don't like. And that's again, I'm not
I do it all the time.
I'm not the hot take guy. I'm not the guy, there are certain national hosts especially who would take a stance against clean water just because it's opposite of someone who likes clean water.
Because it'll get people mad.
Yeah. I like dirty water. Okay.
Builds your immune system.
Yeah. So, anyway, all right.
Tastes great.
So, we're still workshopping this one, and we'll have some theme music and other things later, ultimately this summer. But for now, you want to explain what we're doing?
Absolutely. And actually, you know what? I have a really good
Do you have
idea.
theme music?
We can, because this is Gamecock sports history related.
Okay.
I think it would be appropriate to have Sandstorm underneath this bad boy right here.
Why not?
So what we're doing is we're testing Jay's memory for his health and determining how much you remember from some classic Gamecock football games. Okay. Yesterday, we did the 2002 or 2001 Georgia game.
Yep, that was a good one.
Let's fast forward 11 years to October 6th, 2012, also against Georgia.
Yeah.
This song played a lot.
It did.
During that game. South Carolina beat Georgia 35-7 in that game. Very fun game. Remember watching that on TV?
You know what? It wasn't that close.
And it wasn't that close at all. So how much of the specifics does Jay Phillips remember from this? And you guys can play along at home or in your car too. We'll test everybody's memory.
I'll tell you that this was one of those days, man. So
this was.
I didn't have a post-game show that night. I just had to do pregame. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, there was a post-game show happening. All right, Connor Shaw, quarterback, over under 8.5 completions in this game.
Golly. The way you asked that makes me want to say under, but I'm not. I'm going to say over.
Connor Shaw was 6 for 10 in that game. They won that game by 4 touchdowns. Connor didn't have to complete more than 6 passes.
Wow. I don't know that I would have, I mean, he never had, well, he had a few games where he'd lit it up, but, lighting it up for Connor was not, like some kind of 35 for 45 kind of night.
Right.
But gosh, you know what? I would have maybe said 12 or 14 completions in that game. So half that. Wow.
Yeah. Half of that.
Okay.
Ace Sanders had one of the most memorable, maybe the most memorable play from that game, and one of the most memorable plays ever in the history of the program.
Ever.
But did he go for over or under 68.5 punt return yards for the night?
Well, that one was right about that, right? The one he dropped and then picked up was about, what, 60? I'll give you the under.
Going under? The answer is with that one punt return only, because the other punt was fair caught.
Yeah.
2 returns, 70.
Wow, that was okay from the 30. I was thinking it was like from the 40, but okay.
Close.
I should know that.
Marcus Lattimore, Gamecock legend. Did he go for over or under 125.5 total yards in this game?
Well, okay, if there were only 6 pass completions. Now, what I do remember about that season, I don't have numbers in my head, but if I'm not mistaken, when Marcus got hurt a couple of weeks later, he was South Carolina's leading pass catcher at the time.
Multifaceted.
I'll go over.
You will go over. Over 125.5. Marcus Lattimore had 133 total yards in that game. So you're correct.
Yeah. I wonder how many of those 6 catches he had.
He had 2.
Okay.
He was the only Gamecock to catch multiple passes in that game. Jadeveon Clowney, over under 2.5 tackles for loss.
Let's go over, just because, again, how dominant that game was from a defensive standpoint.
He goes over 2.5 tackles for loss. Jadeveon Clowney against Georgia that night, 2 exact tackles for loss. But one of those was a sack. So
okay, how many TFLs total were there in that game? You have that in front of
heavens.
you? Well, that's okay. That's okay.
You know what? I can tally this up real quick. I'm really good at doing math. 5.5 technically.
Okay. It was obviously when you win by 28, you played good defense, especially against Georgia.
When you held Georgia to 7 points, yeah. And part of that is making sure that Todd Gurley was kept in check. Did Todd Gurley rush for over under 47.5 yards?
You know what? I'll go. I don't remember. I'll go a slight over though, just because. I mean, you know, he could do that and still be held in check.
That's true. He was a monster that year. He ran for a lot of yards in 2012. But when it comes to over under 47.5 yards, he rushed for only 39.
Oh. I'm not doing well today.
13 carries.
I told you, man.
You were 2-1 yesterday, and you ended up being
1-3.
Today 1-5. 4. 1-4. 1-4-5.
But I remember the game. I remember I was there.
I wasn't there, but I do remember watching that game.
That was a good game. Yeah, that ace punt return is. I don't know where to rank it in terms of just memorable, specific, singular plays. And everybody's going to have different ones. I mean, I think back to when I was in high school, like Brad Edwards' pick 6 against Clemson was a big deal. I've joked before about Mike Hold's pooch punt against Georgia in '84, you know, on 3rd and long that just completely flipped everybody on their ear. I mean, Eric Spade.
Yeah.
The kickoff return second half at Clemson in '94. You know, plays like that. And I'm missing. I know I'm missing. Y'all are saying like, Jay, what about? And I know, but I'm just, those are the ones that pop into my head. But that ace one, man, because again, he dropped it.
He dropped it. It was a broken play. And still made magic happen. That guy was electric. Yeah,
he was fun in college. And that's what you needed. You know, you need those difference maker dudes, man. I mean, Debo provided some of that for you, too. Yeah, I joke about Debo and Charlotte against NC State. And then, like, the next week, we were previewing the game at Missouri. And I was like, well, you can't count on Debo to always, you know, have kick returns for scores.
And guess what he did?
He went and did it. Because Carolina was down that Missouri game the next week. Carolina, I think, was down 10-0. It did not start well. Mm-hmm. And then Debo had his play, and I think he had another play where he had like a big jet sweep or something in that game, if I have my games right. And then Carolina went on to win. But yeah, 2 weeks in a row with kick returns.
Can you guess what Georgia was ranked coming into this game? Do you remember what Georgia was ranked coming into this game?
I want to say in that game, Georgia might have still been higher than South Carolina. I mean, I can't. I mean, around 10, and maybe Carolina was around 15. Does that sound about right?
Even better. Georgia was number 5.
Okay.
And South Carolina was number 6. And I believe that was a College game day game, correct?
All right, I should remember that then.
I want to say
now I'm mad at myself for not remembering that they were that high. Yeah.
Would you like to guess, too, or if you can recall, how late in the game was it when Georgia finally got on the scoreboard?
What, like 7 or 8 minutes to go?
More like 1 minute and 55 seconds left. It was 35-0 going into the final 2 minutes, what we would now call a 2-minute warning. And then Ken Malcolm had a 3-yard rushing touchdown.
Spurrier let him score.
I just figured I'd be nice to him.
Yeah.
Give him something.
Yeah. Visitors. Kind.
Hospitality.
Yeah. And I haven't gone back and like watched that game in any. It's been a long time anyway. But again, I might have been having some fun by halftime.
Attaboy.
Thank you.
I mean, at halftime it was 21-0, so there's fun to be had.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't leave because where we sat, I got to. Yeah, I was good. That's all. I was good.
You're good with where you were.
It was a good day. All right. Well, that didn't do as well, but you know what? It's still a fun day.
Still a fun day to remember with as much as you're able to remember.
We will come back on the other side. I want to. It's not breaking news from the SEC meetings, but something to share when it comes to what the future could look like that has come out this afternoon. We'll tell you when the postgame show returns. If a new set of wheels is in your future, let me recommend paying for it through Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. No better place than Palmetto Citizens to finance that next vehicle. They offer great low rates on new to 21 models, fantastic options for older vehicles. Maybe you've got a grad or new driver in the family, younger driver, and you want to start them out with something that's a little more seasoned. Many of the plans also come with no payments for up to 90 days. And at Palmetto Citizens, they can finance over 100% of the retailer purchase price on those new to 21 models. And they offer additional coverage and insurance options that dealerships simply cannot beat. So shop all around. Find that next car, whether it's something beat up, something for the farm, something for hunting, for tailgating, or something brand new that you've been wanting for a long time. Then check with Palmetto Citizens before you finance anywhere else and see how much you can save. Log on to palmettocitizens.org to apply and learn more, or stop into any of their 14 convenient Midlands locations. That's Palmetto Citizens.
From the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell with a few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways this afternoon. Starting, actually just one of them. A couple of them popped off the screen here. Just one. As of right now, an accident at Hugh G. Street near Blossom Street here downtown, causing some mild traffic backup. But other than that, nothing else to report to you, thankfully. Do have some long-term road construction on 2026 and I-126. But other than that, just the accident on Hugh G. Street near Blossom Street.
Been talking a lot about the future of college football scheduling as the SEC meetings are taking place this week. They do that annually down on the Florida Gulf Coast, the Northern Gulf there in Destin. They used to hand out the oversized novelty checks this week, but again, they don't do that anymore. That comes later.
They just give them a regular size check?
No,
Take to a regular
they
bank?
they hand the checks out later in the year. I think it's sometime later. I like them this time of year.
I feel like Duke from Semi-Pro. It's like, can you just give me a regular size check? The bank says that I can't cash this. And Jackie was telling him, is like, have you tried going to a big check bank that cashes big checks?
Or Happy Gilmore when he keeps all of his oversized novelty checks in his back seat. Anyway, a couple of poll questions today, then I'll get into something that goes directly into this. I've thrown these out for you on Twitter. Please feel free to play along. First one, assuming each school was scheduling under the same rules, would you be in favor of the Power Forward conferences only playing football games against each other, both in and out of conference? A, yes, more competition. B, no. I also like cupcakes. 52-48.
It's pretty
right
close.
now, cupcakes. So most of you would favor still keeping almost a guaranteed win on there. Okay. I would not have voted. I can't vote in my own poll, but I would not have voted for that. I'll give you my opinion.
I think by the way you worded it, Matt, have insinuated
Maybe.
that you wouldn't have voted for it.
Maybe. But I do like cupcakes.
I do.
I mean, a good cupcake from like Publix or, I mean, heck, if you make your own cupcakes and they're good, I'll eat one. Nothing wrong with cupcakes. And, you get everything about it. Cupcake is great because it's like a whole cake and 3 bites.
Went to Gigi's a couple weeks ago. I had a red velvet cupcake and one of the best things I've ever had.
Yeah, with that cream cheese icing.
Yes.
Yeah. Well done.
Whoa, buddy.
Is there still the cupcake place right down the street here on in the Vista?
I guess there's only one way to find out.
Where's the one you went?
Trip.
Where's the one you?
That one's in 5 Points.
Yeah, no, there used to be one like I think it was just called Cupcake down here in the Vista.
Well, at least it tells you what you're getting into.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that.
They had a key
type of
lime one too
advertising.
that was really
Oh
good.
my God! Don't tell me that. Start
They
drooling
had
on this
they had a
microphone.
few good ones. I don't know. I haven't been down there in a while. I don't know if they're still there.
I have an insatiable sweet tooth.
The other one is there are several proposals being discussed when it comes to future SEC football schedules and the college football playoff format. Assuming there will be 16 in the playoff, which of these two would you prefer? Straight seeding in the playoff and 8 conference games, or 4 automatic spots in the playoff with 9 conference games? Right now, 61%, 8 is enough. And 39%, 9 just means more.
Now, what I would like to ask people, out of the people who voted for 8, if it was the other round where it's 9 and there are no automatic qualifiers, but we do go to 16 teams in the college football playoff, does that change your thinking? I think the auto bids is what holds a lot of people back, because the whole 4 auto bids for 2 conference for both the SEC and the Big Ten, that turns a lot of people off. And I think that.
Did you see Joel Klatt's latest spiel on that? The Fox football analyst. He made some pretty good points. He was, and as a Big Ten analyst, now he went to Colorado. I don't really care where you went, but he's a Big Ten analyst. But he was not real happy with the Big Ten or SEC. Let's just put it that way. He thought it was a bit much what they were trying to do. We'll see. Again, a lot of this is trial balloon type stuff. On that note, today, as more of this was discussed amongst coaches and athletics directors, you have a lot of coaches speaking about the future of scheduling. Brian Kelly said today, we want to compete against the Big Ten. The Big Ten right now holds it on the SEC. They won the last 2 championships. That's the reality. We want to get challenged in that regard, and we'd like to be able to get that done. That's up to our commissioner and the ADs to see if that can happen or not, but that is the wish of the room. So as the SEC coaches today, we're discussing a potential Southeastern Conference Big Ten football challenge. They want it. Kelly also said that he'd be in favor of playing 9 games. Although in this particular article that I'm reading, which Heather Dinich has authored, she says that the Big Ten SEC challenge is, in her words, dead in the water at the commissioner level. That seems surprising to me. If anything, I would have figured the opposite, that the trickle-down effect would be what the commissioners would want, that Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti would be like, hey, why don't we get together and schedule a weekend of games and, make a lot of money, half of them at your place and half of them at my place. So I guess not. But Kelly says in terms of that, they let their ADs and the commissioner know that that's what they want. But he added, again in Heather's piece, you've got to get a partner who says we're in for that too. Sam Pittman of Arkansas said he'd like to do it, but, quote, how are we going to do it, he asked. Are we going to go to 9, playing ourselves, and maybe invite another conference to play us on a given weekend? Shane Beamer was asked about it. He said in terms of a Big Ten opponent and a Clemson game, quote, for me, I think it's ironclad when it comes to playing Clemson. There's people above me who make that decision, but I would never want that game to go away. Rivalries and rivalry weekend are what make this sport great. I know how important that game is to the people of South Carolina. I don't want that game going anywhere. And Carolina Clemson's not going anywhere. Shane has been on our program making mention that if everybody's doing it, he wants to do it. And I'll remind everybody again that South Carolina, obviously, this year South Carolina is going to play Virginia Tech in a neutral site game, but in the subsequent 6 seasons, South Carolina has home and home scheduled with Miami, North Carolina, and North Carolina State. And obviously the Clemson game every year. And again, Clemson's not going anywhere from the Gamecock football schedule. So to Sam Pittman, to the point Sam Pittman made or asked about, at least, Elijah, and maybe even to what Brian Kelly is saying, one of the things those two schools have, and they're not unique, but one of the things those two schools or really don't have is an in-state, out-of-conference, or some type of out-of-conference rivalry. And so I think that was one of the points that Shane was making, and that's a point that Scott Strickland, the AD at Florida, and Billy Napier have made. And, you can scoff a little bit. You and I touched on this morning when we were meeting. FSU last year wasn't very good, but typically they are. So, Florida State, Georgia. Hey, look, Georgia Tech gave Georgia a hell of a game last year.
They only went to 7 overtimes.
It was so much fun, except for one of my children who might or might not be matriculating through the University of Georgia. The one pushback we've heard is from Kentucky, who said, "Oh, we might not be able to play Louisville if we go to 9 conference games," which again is just
weak.
Ugh. But here again is why I'm talking about it. Because I've heard from a couple of you on Twitter as well that are Gamecock fans, like, why would the Gamecocks want to do that? And I understand that you want to look at it specifically through the lens of your school, which I totally understand. It's my school too. But I'm looking at it professionally, as I've mentioned a few times today and in other points, across the board. So I can't just look at it through a South Carolina lens. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of this is what more people want. I think more fans want this. I think television wants more of this. And listen, you're losing audience to the National Football League.
Especially the later you go in your season.
Yeah, I mean, it's been proven. It's been proven now. You're losing audience to the National Football League, even at the highest levels, which the SEC and Big Ten are. A Big Ten SEC challenge would go a long way towards at least holding some of those viewers, maybe creating some new ones here and there. But if the coaches are the ones, Elijah, that are telling their bosses, we want this, that's a positive sign. Now, again, how you provide the necessary competitive balance is a trick, but it's doable. It's certainly doable, All right, we'll come back on the other side. Jay or nay? Any of this going to be on there or other stuff? Nah, you know what? I'll find out.
You'll find out.
All right. Welcome back in. 11 minutes in front of 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. Jay and Elijah with you. The postgame show, top of the hour headlines coming up at 5. We'll have some more sound from Greg Sankey in the SEC meetings as part of what we do in the 5:15 and 5:30 segments. Of course, drive around the SEC next hour as well, plus Jay versus the Internet. Our good friend John hit us as we discussed FCS teams on Power 4 schedules. He said an example of what you typically get from the FCS game is the Wofford game last season. That game also followed the Missouri game, so there was hardly any get-up-for-it energy that night from the fans and probably the players alike. Yeah, I mean, that's oftentimes, John, not exclusively, but oftentimes probably a reason why you might see those upsets. It's just, you know, again, like Elijah said earlier, and we had a caller kind of pushing on it, like, you know, these guys don't come in here to just play the big boy. Yeah, they kind of do just come in here to play the big boys. And off air, you made a point, but I want you to say it on air because, again, you know, go ahead.
I mean, we hear players all the time talk about why they chose Carolina, and I love listening to those because I'm so fascinated as to what a good recruiting pitch is for different personality types and people. And out of all of these that I've heard, I love listening to the interviews on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. They have players in studio all the time. But thinking back on it, I don't think I've heard one say, you know what, I really came to South Carolina so I could beat the Citadel.
Right. And again, that's not a knock. It's just
that's not what they come in. They came here to play in the SEC.
Yeah, they want to play Tennessee,
they want to
Georgia,
play on
and Florida.
Biggest stage.
Alabama,
and SEC
and
football in the regular season is the biggest stage in the sport.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, again, it's not a knock. It's just it's a reality. Andrew says, let me make sure I've got the right thing that he's replying to here. Okay, only playing each other. Yeah, only Power 4 versus Power 4. He says, I'm all for it, but only if they then make the playoff exclusive for the Power 4 and let the G5, which is now technically the G6, have their own playoff too. They deserve to have a championship to play for. I mean, they do, Andrew. They're in now. I don't technically disagree with this, but because it's been carved out in the agreement that the highest ranked, well, it's not even they're not really. Listen, there's a way. Well, there really isn't anymore, is there? Because we don't have a Power 5, and it's 5 highest ranked conference champions. So one of those conference champions is going to always be included. In the playoff.
We'll always have a participant.
Unless we find a way to get the Pac-12 back. But I doubt it. All right, let's do Jay or Nay.
That means the music.
Yeah, that's all I'm here for.
All right, Jay or Nay. The top 8 seed most in trouble of missing supers in the NCAA baseball tournament is Auburn. They are playing with Central Connecticut to start, and they will have to take on the winner or loser if Central Connecticut pulls off the upset between Stetson and NC State.
That is a good one. What's the Oregon State's got Southern Cal and
Southern Cal would be tough.
Is that Southern Cal, Arizona State? Are they the ones going to up there to play? I can't remember right off the top of my head, so I apologize. I don't have it pulled up.
I've got it pulled up right here. The Corvallis Regional. That has Southern Cal and TCU, Oregon State, St. Mary's.
Yeah, that might be. Yeah, maybe because Auburn's pretty good. I don't know.
Auburn is pretty good.
So I'm going to say nay. I'm going to say nay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say nay, and I'm going to say Oregon State.
I like that. I like it. Jay or nay? Terry Bradshaw's right. Aaron Rodgers needs to get over himself.
Yeah. 100 times Jay. Terry. Yes. If y'all didn't hear, Terry Bradshaw, who lives, I think, in the greater Dallas area, but he did a show in Arkansas, and he was just ripping his old club and Aaron Rodgers. And I think he's absolutely spot on. I mean, what are we waiting for? It'll be June this weekend.
They're already doing, mini camps.
He's missing OTAs, and he's not played with them. I know how good we all know how good he is, or at least how good he can be. Yeah, it was. I'll say how he can be. And, and he mentioned how the Steelers failed Kenny Pickett. He's right. They didn't surround him with the right kind of things. The Steelers are in trouble, man. And I told you this morning, the Steelers are approaching New York Giants territory. And what I mean by that is you're supposed to be really good every year, and you're about to not be.
Yeah.
And by not be, like, not be.
My biggest gripe with them is I feel like they're just missing a window where the defense has been dominant and so good, and they're making the playoffs off the backs of their defense and Mike Tomlin being able to take any group to the playoffs, right? But without a quarterback and a high-octane offense, you kind of limit yourself as to how good you can be. And if you want to make Aaron Rodgers your quarterback, fine. You probably want to be here for OTAs.
And the Pittsburgh Steelers are arguably, with the Cowboys, the biggest club in the NFL, and that means in all of American football. And they're not in it to make the playoffs.
No,
they're in it to hoist trophies because they've
win
done
superb
that
owls
6 times. So yeah, hour 3 coming up. AAA Heating and Air, ready to keep you and your family nice and cool all summer long. We've had a nice little break from the heat in the Midlands of South Carolina the last few days, but do not get used to it because soon enough it'll be hot. And if it's been a while since you've had your system checked out, call 803-677-1500. Let AAA come out, give you a full inspection, make sure you're good to go. Maybe you're a little low on coolant, or maybe you don't know how old your system is, or maybe your system is working, but it is also very expensive because it's very old and it's costing you more. Now's a great time to take advantage of a fantastic opportunity from AAA. How about guaranteed financing? 15-year parts and labor guarantee, no payments or interest for a full year, $1,500 system buyback rebate, and the comfort and knowledge of knowing that you and your family will be nice and cool all summer long for years to come. 803-677-1500. Tell them we sent you to AAA Heating and Air.
From the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell with some fantastic news. And that fantastic news is that there are no accident-related traffic backups here in the Midlands this afternoon. Now, of course, we do have some long-term road construction that might cause some issues on your commute, like on I-20 between exit 64 and 65, 26 between exit 108A and exit 125, and on I-126 between Hugh Street and I-26. But other than those long-term road construction projects, really no traffic backups relating to accidents at this point.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Wednesday. It's also the final hour of the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. We start with some really cool local news. Congratulations to South Carolina head softball coach Ashley Chastain Woodard. She today was named National Coach of the Year by the folks at D1 Softball. Of course, Carolina tied a bunch of team records, earned a national seed for the first time in program history. At one point, Ashley had the team in the top 10. Obviously, heartbreaking loss on Saturday, and ultimately a super regional loss to mighty UCLA this weekend. But the 44 wins that she led the team to are the most for a first-year head coach in program history, the second most overall in the program since 2002. It was their first winning SEC record in 7 years and just their second in the last 22 years. So, again, huge congratulations. There are other National Coach of the Year awards that will be presented over the course of the next couple of weeks. And, of course, the Women's College World Series starts later this week out in Oklahoma City. I won't editorialize too much. Elijah may want to go a little bit more on this than I
Yes.
will. I found it, dare I say, and it's not really my place, but I'm going to anyway because this is my job.
We're going to make it our place.
I thought it was insulting that Ashley was not named Southeastern Conference Coach of the Year. Oklahoma is without question the mightiest program in the country and has been for a long time. And I know it's their first year in the Southeastern Conference and to come in and do what they did, but they were supposed to. South Carolina, if you want to look at preseason prognostication from fellow coaches or others that cover it, Carolina was supposed to finish, 14, 15, or 16.
I think they're picked last.
And some, I think they might have been. To not do that, but instead to earn a national seed, I just speaks volumes about what you can do in a short turnaround. So, I don't want to be too much of a local or whatever else, but here's the National Coach of the Year, by a major, sporting publication, but not the Conference Coach of the Year. And look, you don't always have to have them go hand in hand, but I did find it rather stunning a couple of weeks ago when she was not named the Conference Coach of the Year.
Look, I understand that a lot of Coach of the Year awards, especially from a national level, can sometimes mean the best overachiever of the year. I understand sometimes that goes hand in hand, and I know some people are tired of giving it to an overachiever. But think about it this way, right? A first-year head coach in the SEC, that's a daunting task, especially coming from a place like Charlotte, where you're in the AAC. Not saying you can't be successful in the SEC, but that's a big jump up. And to do what she did in the first year, not just have that season in the SEC, but to be a national seed, a top 8 national seed, is punching so high up above your weight class from what you were expected to be, that a lot of that is coaching. And then doing so with the most transfers of anybody at the D1 level. They mentioned that on the broadcast this weekend several times of how transfer heavy they are. To get those girls to buy in and to be able to produce at the level they did is a remarkable coaching job. And then as it pertains to Oklahoma, what's Oklahoma's standard every year, Jay Phillips?
National title.
And to do that, you are, if that's your expectation, where you've won, how many championships in a row? I think they're at 4 now.
Something like that.
Then your expectation in the regular season would be good enough to do what? Be the number 1 overall seed going into the NCAA tournament. Would you agree that if you're not the number 1 overall seed going into the NCAA tournament, with Oklahoma's history and Oklahoma's pedigree and winning the last 4 national championships, if you're not the number 1 overall seed going into it, would you say you underachieved a bit?
It depending on how people want to view you, yeah. Because A&M was the number 1 overall seed.
The standard for A&M is to be the best team in America.
Yeah.
They were not viewed as the best team in America. Yeah. So tell me again how that coaching job at Oklahoma this year was better than what the standard normally is. Yeah. They could still win the national championship. And you know what? I would pick them to win the national championship.
Yeah, they probably will.
Because they're bleeping Oklahoma, right? I get it.
Well, and it's basically a home
series.
Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know, Norman they don't play in their ballpark, but Norman is to Oklahoma City what Camden is to Columbia.
Yeah. There are some very athletic people in this world who could pogo stick from Oklahoma City to Norman.
Yeah.
Right? Like that there's a possibility. That's just what blows my mind here is that the SEC coaches saw Oklahoma just do what Oklahoma normally does. And even in Oklahoma standards, not being a number 1 overall seed means you might have gotten dethroned in the eyes of a selection committee in terms of being the best team in America. Now, hilariously, Texas A&M took that opportunity and did nothing with it in classic Texas A&M fashion. Because remember, kids, there's not an athletic department in the country that spends more money per loss than Texas A&M, especially at a high level. But for South Carolina to do what they did, being picked last to be a top 8 seed, not just top 8 in your conference, you were seen as top 8 in the country. Remarkable coaching job with a first-year head coach. Still a little bit of a head scratcher in that regard.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I'm glad she got the national award, and I hope there are others to come. But congratulations to Ashley Chastain Woodard, the D1 softball national coach of the year.
We'll take that over the SEC, though.
Yeah, well deserved. Well deserved.
Very well deserved.
Continuing our integrated media headlines of the day, NBA last night. It was the how did I do, by the way, in the Jay versus the internet on this one? Honestly,
you were close. I can't give you credit for the win. Yeah, it's a horseshoes and hand grenades type deal. But you did a really good job by picking the Pacers to cover that spread.
I got that one right.
They did. They were favorites, and
2.5, right?
Or they were underdogs. Actually, they were. No,
they
just
were
kidding. No,
they were
2.5 point favorites.
Yeah, 2.5.
I looked at the wrong Pacers Knicks game on my sheet here, but they were 2.5 point favorites. They won by more than 2.5. So give yourself a pat on the back there. But when it comes to
for those who are watching, you can see me patting myself on the back.
Yeah, and as you should, well deserved.
I felt good.
I made the last one tricky on purpose to have a little fun with it.
Yeah.
And the last one, for those who don't remember, didn't participate, you had to pick the highest score out of this group, which that group was Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam from the Pacers, or
both real.
Jalen Brunson. Yeah, both real. Pascal Siakam, once a denier, now a believer. And Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns for the Knicks. And I was telling you this morning, I was proud of that prop that I created because all those players scored at least 24 points, and 3 of them scored at least 30. However, Pascal Siakam, his 30 points was less than 32 from Tyrese Halliburton and less than 31 from Jalen Brunson. So Tyrese Halliburton, as our friend Michael Geddes calls the Burt, had 32. And neither you nor the internet.
And he was glad his pops was back in the building up in a suite instead of being able to get into any Knicks faces or Spike Lee's face.
It could have been a dangerous game to have him courtside. However, one thing that needs to be discussed, Tyrese Halliburton had maybe one of the greatest playoff performances in NBA history. I mean, 32 points, 15 assists, 12 rebounds, and he had the same number of turnovers, Jay Phillips, as you and I had in that game. And for those who are wondering, I know you probably think that me and you can play, but we did not participate. We were DNPs.
That is impressive. When your one is that strong, that's a big deal. They're up
Stockton-like performance, man, to have that many assists and no turnovers in a playoff game.
Yeah, they're up 3-1. They'll head back to the Garden on Friday, I believe. Let me make sure of that, right? Or is it tomorrow night? Let me see. No, they're back tomorrow night in the Garden.
Yeah, they're back at it tomorrow
night. Okay.
A chance to seal the deal
tonight in OKC. The Thunder can close out the T-Wolves. They're up 3-1, and I guess this is going to be on there. I don't know. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. Okay. Well, Oklahoma City an 8.5-point favorite according to ESPN Bet. Tip-off is at 8:30. The Thunder are going to win tonight, so you go ahead and mark that one down.
You think they're going to win by more than 8.5?
Ooh, you know what? Save that. I don't know. I might not. I might want those points.
Because to the Timberwolves' credit, they played with them.
Yeah, they have. I might want those 8
for a lot.
Points.
The loss the other night was only a 2-point loss, and of course on Saturday night they just beat the brakes off of Oklahoma City.
Well, Oklahoma City just took the day.
And that was in Minnesota.
Right.
And then the win in Game 2, for reference, that was a 15-point win. Math, Elijah. That's a 118, not 108.
I don't like
that. A 15-point win. And then last Tuesday in Game 1, it was a lot. They did beat Minnesota by a lot of points.
Well, we'll come back around to that one. I'm not gonna pick just yet. Last night, Spencer Strider and the Braves fell to the Philadelphia Phillies. Final score 2-0. Spencer was okay last night, but I think nothing is bad in sports.
Yeah, even if Spencer struck out 12 and got you 8 innings, if you still gave up the 2 runs, then you're still going to lose because you didn't score any.
Well, he only gave up 1 run. That was in the bottom of the second. 4 2/3, just the 1 run, 7 strikeouts, and 4 walks. You and I were talking about him earlier. You can tell there's still some rust there as he's working on his control. But Atlanta at this point, and I saw a stat earlier, I don't have it. I didn't write it down, but it basically was just letting us know just how bad Matt Olson, Michael Harris, Austin Riley, and Sean Murphy have been this season, and all of them are hitting. Well, the 3 of them, Riley's not, but the other 3 are hitting below 250, maybe even below 240. Which in and of itself, if your OBP is better, it's okay. And Riley has not hit a home run since May the 4th.
Ooh, since Star Wars Day.
Yeah. Acuna is back, but Snit is going to have to find a way to juggle that lineup and get something going. I don't know what that it is, and it can't just you can't just rely on Ronald Acuna to come in and save the day.
And rookie Drake Baldwin to play
and Drake Baldwin,
out of his means.
Yeah, and you've got to you're paying Sean Murphy a lot, and you can't put that on Drake. So
it's great when he plays the way he has.
Yeah, it is, man. But they gotta find a way to do something. They were supposed to play a business person's special today in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, that game was rained out, and they've decided to go ahead and play 2 tomorrow. So they will not make this one up later. They're up there, and they were going to play a day game today. So I guess the feeling between the 2 clubs was, let's just do it tomorrow. So tomorrow, a doubleheader in Philadelphia. But the Phillies are now in first place, of course, in the NL East. So.
ESPN app lied to me, said the game was at 6:35 tonight. So that's why I made one of the questions for Jay versus the Internet that game. But it will be applicable for Game 1 tomorrow.
Well, hang on, because I was under the impression that it was a. You know what? You could be right, Elijah, that it could have been a night game. I saw earlier that they were going to play this afternoon, but maybe they went ahead. Because they called the game early. They called the game before we came on the air.
They did, yes. And I saw that.
So it may, you know what? I could be. That could be on me.
I saw that app push notification, and I said, "Wow, postponing already."
I mean, that came out early, so maybe they just knew that it was just going to be raining all day. Regardless, doubleheader tomorrow in Philadelphia. That's our integrated media headlines of the day. We'll come back with more on what's going on at the SEC meetings as coaches and the commissioner may be at a loggerheads when it comes to the future of scheduling.
I love loggers.
More of that and update our poll questions as well. You're listening to the Postgame Show. 18 minutes after 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. Welcome back in. It's the Postgame Show. Jay and Elijah with you. SEC spring meetings continuing on in Destin, Florida. And while there won't be any, I don't believe, any major breaking news this week, sadly, I do hope that we've moved closer. I don't even want to say inched. I hope we've at least, made more progress than that when it comes to future scheduling, both within the conference and then what the future of the college football playoff looks like. And those two things do go hand in hand. If you missed it earlier, Heather Dinich has a piece out this afternoon after all the coaches. But I think for the most part, the football coaches are probably done now. They've been down there for a couple of days. But Brian Kelly leading the charge, saying that in the coaches' room, and again, it's nothing more than kind of a bully pulpit vote, that the coaches of the SEC, I don't know if it's all 16 of them, Elijah, but that most of them, he said the wish in the room was for an SEC Big Ten challenge of some variety. And I know I'm here for that. And I'm not even that. You made a point. This could be something that's good for everyone. How about an ACC Big 12 challenge? How about an SEC ACC? How about a Big 10 Big 12? Let's rotate these things around. This is what I'm saying, and however I may come across, and earlier today, for those of you who just tuned in, I don't want to say inadvertently, but I unintentionally, not for the first time, hacked a few people off that love their particular FCS school here in our state or just love FCS football. I love FCS football. But I don't want it on Power 4 schedules anymore. That's all. I want those as spring games. I've made that abundantly clear. I think that'd be fun. You could sell a ticket for $10. You could get people to come on in, enjoy a ball game. It's a real ball game. You'll see some stars. You'll see the first team play, as opposed to, not that I don't like what they did. I mean, I'm sitting across from a Carolina spring game football coach.
You are. 29 yards per play.
I mean, very successful play calling.
Razzle dazzle to start the game.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, you know who you got. You get to hit somebody else. And look, you can certainly, as I've said before, in spring games, you can put a few parameters in place to make sure that you mitigate injury as best as possible. You don't eliminate or prevent, because it's football, but you don't have to hit the quarterbacks. You can't block a punt or a kick, things like that. Maybe no blitzing. There's ways to still run some plays and do it. Anyway, you can play a spring game against, if you're Carolina and Clemson, you can rotate the in-state schools into your spring. But they don't need to be on the fall schedule anymore. And I've felt that way for a long time. A long time now. Seriously. Really, I think the final straw for me, honestly, and I mentioned it earlier today, but I didn't say it this way, was when Carolina beat Charleston Southern in 2019 by 62 points. And that was a bad Gamecock football team. That kind of tells you what we're talking about here. Like, what's the point? And some of you say, well, Jay, the point is to give that school some money. I'd just as soon give them some money.
Right.
And still play a better football game and a better football team and a more competitive football game. That's what I'm here for. Again, when you watch the NFL, raise your hand right now. Raise your mental hand if you're in the car or wherever you may be, and ask yourself how much you would like to see the Pittsburgh Steelers play the Birmingham Stallions. I'll wait. Okay, that's what I thought.
What about the Toronto Argonauts?
Yeah, or the Argonauts.
If Ricky Williams is playing.
Or the BC Lions. Or whomever. You don't. When you watch the NFL, you expect the NFL to play. Now, look, there might be some bad NFL teams, and there are. You can't help that. There's going to be bad teams in sports.
Yes.
The Rockies are a Major League Baseball team.
Barely.
Right, officially.
In name only.
Right, officially. That's a Major League Baseball team. So I get it. There are bad teams. As you mentioned, Purdue went 0 for football last year. And they're in the Big Ten. It happens. Can't help that. But you can help the rest of your scheduling. Here's an interesting one. Donnie hits us on Twitter.
Hi, Donnie.
He says, a 10-game schedule, 9 versus the conference, 1 P4 out of conference. The top 4 from each conference play. Those winners make the conference title game. Title game winners go to a playoff. Eliminate bowl games. Go with conference challenge format, Big Ten versus SEC or whatever, as the bowl game. It's an interesting concept. I don't know that they would go for that. I've wondered, Elijah, if you could find a way from a revenue standpoint to eliminate, like let's take the FCS game. And again, not everybody plays an FCS opponent. I think probably the bulk of schools do. I think Notre Dame finally played one for the first time. I don't think Texas has one on their schedule this year. But you'll step down a little bit. Texas will play, San Antonio or something now. And I think UTSA probably used to be, but isn't anymore. Or North Texas or something like that.
Conference champions, baby. It's the USA.
Roadrunners, man. But could you just eliminate that game entirely, condense the schedule? Could you make up for it in other ways, revenue-wise, if you just eliminated a game from the schedule? I don't think you can do that anymore. I think, sadly, when they went to 12, they were like, ooh, there's a new revenue stream, and I don't know that you can eliminate said stream.
No, I think
or
at this
dam
point,
it up, as it were.
Any stream is probably not going to be messed with at this point.
So, again, making it a better game, maybe that stream could use a little clean out, and then all of a sudden it becomes a little bit, better flow.
So if you make more per game, right, then you maybe make it up in the aggregate there. But I think the biggest thing for me, what kind of pulled me to this side of the argument, has been really within the last couple of years when it comes to arguing strength of schedule within conferences. Because if you don't schedule a ton of out-of-conference games between your Power Four there, when we start debating these things come November, when we are regularly putting out college football playoff rankings, our sample size of these conferences against each other can sometimes be really small and inadequate.
Right.
But if we make it mandated to where you only play within the Power Four, you have a really big picture of what to work with, right? Let's just say, we can use an Alabama example. Let's say the SEC top to bottom is better than normal, right? Than how good the SEC normally is. And you have a 9-3 Alabama or 9-3 Ole Miss, 9-3 South Carolina, and you look at those losses within the conference, and you say, South Carolina beat Clemson. Let's just say in this hypothetical, they have that opener against Virginia Tech. They beat Virginia Tech, so they're 2-0 against the ACC. And let's say they played Illinois, rematch the bowl game, and they beat Illinois. So now, that SEC team is 3-0 in those non-conference games. And let's say Ole Miss and Alabama played similar schedules, where Ole Miss, let's say they still even played Wake Forest, but then had to play Michigan, but they beat Michigan. And Alabama had to play, Wisconsin,
they got Wisconsin
like they did last year. So they beat Wisconsin, and say they played an ACC team, they beat NC State. Well, then you have, and say NC State and Wisconsin are better than they were last year. Well, then you have a really good sample size. Those three teams not only were 9-3 in the mighty SEC, but they took care of business, man. They took care of business against the ACC and the Big Ten. You just have a larger sample size to be able to use to further prove the SEC is better than other conferences, rather than relying on a metric that a lot of that metric is determined at the beginning of the season when we're going off of how good we think these teams will be.
And so much of those computer ratings actually do, and that's one of the things that kind of bothers me about it, is that some of those, like the FPI, actually takes into account how you were projected.
Yes.
And it remains part of the formula. If I'm not mistaken, it lessens through the season. But it is still one of the factors that determines your FPI score. Now, that's not necessarily something that the committee really latches onto, but it is one, to your point, one of the metrics that is used. And again, I want to commend Elijah for something he said earlier today, and I'm going to steal it from him right now, but you made the great point about the FCS level schools. They play for their own title. They are in a separate division. That in and of itself is the only proof you need. They play for a championship. They are not part. They are Division I.
But we have
as a
Division
school,
I and split into two
but
different
you've split
titles.
Yeah, you've split it. They play for their, and they've been playing for their own championship, if I'm not mistaken, since the late 1970s. So, this has long been a separate division of college sports. And I think you make, another point you make about sort of cross-conference games. Think of all the games that we see in basketball in November and December. Think of baseball games where South Carolina plays Clemson, but Clemson plays Georgia, and Carolina plays North Carolina or NC State, and on we could go with games like that. There are several, Florida and Florida State, Auburn and Georgia Tech. We've seen a lot of that this year, and I got more, but that's a good enough sample.
You know how I knew the SEC was a juggernaut in men's basketball this year? Not because of the strength of schedule. I honestly rarely look at strength of schedule when it comes to parsing through resumes come March. The reason I knew they were that good is because they won 89% of their non-conference games,
right.
Most of those being against your ACC, Big Ten, Big East. They all scheduled a lot of various games against your power conferences and dominated it.
South Carolina was 3-0 against the ACC.
Yeah, they were.
It's crazy.
But that's all I needed to know about how good the league was going to be this year is because I got the proof on the court before we even played conference games.
That's what Carolina had more conference wins against the ACC than they did in the SEC.
Ooh. Oh, boy.
Yikes. Drive around the SEC. More of this conversation coming up. Cato's Power Equipment ready to help you out when it comes to getting the yard looking good. Whether you do it for yourself, you do it for a living, Cato's ready to help you. And as Ben says in a lot of the commercials that he does that you hear here on our radio station, it's not just, the professional landscapers in terms of their own private companies, but a lot of the guys that do this across campuses all over the Midlands, whether it's at the Fort or whether it's on college campuses, which there are a lot of, high school campuses, hospital campuses, government campuses. So, they do a lot of that kind of business as well. So if you're looking for a place to make sure that all of your equipment is in tip-top shape or you want the latest, 4012 West Beltline Boulevard, where Cato's has been and family-owned since the early 1980s. Love what they've done for me. My Toro equipment, fantastic. I get the yard work done. I get it done quicker. I get it done better. You can check them out online, too, at catospowerequipment.com.
From the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell with some really good news, and that is that there are no traffic or accident-related traffic backups here in the Midlands this afternoon. Of course, we still have some long-term road construction that might cause you a little bit of inconvenience on the way home over on I-20 between exit 64 and 65 and on 26 between exit 108A and exit 125. But other than that, no accident-related traffic backups.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Wednesday. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Jay versus the Internet still to come.
Unfortunately for you. But you can't go 1 and 2 tonight because one of the events has been postponed for tomorrow. Now you can go 0 and 2.
Technicality, huh?
But you can't do the Jay Phillips special, which is go 1 and 2.
I'm just, at this point, I'm just trying to lose. Let's see how bad I can be. Let's see if I can be.
Oh, is that the case?
The
Is
Colorado
that what this
Rockies.
is?
Yeah, I'm like I am. I'm in Rockies mode.
You got to really be bad to
Thank you.
top Rockies mode at this point.
All right. Hey, that in and of itself, sir,
Challenge.
is a challenge. It is Drive Around the SEC time. We just mentioned basketball, so I'll start there real quick for you. Tahad Pettiford will be back with the Auburn basketball team next season. Last year, one of the better guards in the country. I'm trying to get his numbers here for you. 11.6 points, 3 assists, 23 minutes a game, all freshman team for the Tigers. He went into the draft combine as the number 35 rated prospect. He had a pretty good showing in a couple of the scrimmages. I don't know if they have any official name for those, but combine games.
Yeah, they're kind of like combine games. Like the G League does a few, and then if you get invited, you play well enough, or teams request
all right.
you can play in the NBA scouting combine games.
But I think you would agree his coming, and he basically, I won't get into all the details, but he says he's coming back because he wants to improve his stock, and he got all the feedback. But I can see Bruce next year. Instead of 23 minutes, I could probably see a kid like that maybe going up to 33 minutes.
I think he'll start.
Yeah.
He came off the bench last year. But the thing about Tahad Pettiford, if you just want to get a glimpse, is how impressive he was early on. I mean, he was impressive all year long. But for those who remember J.P. Pegues over at Furman, who hit the game-winning shot against Virginia in the NCAA tournament, very memorable play. Well, he hit the portal, and he went to Auburn because Auburn picked him up to basically have him as like the holdover backup point guard for Tahad Pettiford to kind of play behind and get ready to start playing major minutes. And as we know, J.P. Pegues didn't play a lot at Auburn because Tahad Pettiford was so much better than what they expected early on, was that he ended up taking that backup point guard role and ran with it and ended up being a major contributor on a team that many believed was the best, and I believe was the best in the country for most of the year. About 90% of the year, that was the best team in the country. And he played a vital role because he was able to be so good so early that they really didn't have a spot for Pegues to get minutes at that point.
Well, he's back. I suppose there's a few days left here for some of these kids to still decide this. I don't know what the drop dead date is.
I don't think there is a drop dead date. For the draft.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you've declared but want to come back,
that's like
I think they still have
before the draft.
I think they still have a few days left. Lane Kiffin made some pretty interesting news. He, as the coaches at the SEC meetings, have been discussing several different, again, in-conference and playoff scenarios. Lane basically said, look, just rank them at the end. Let everybody do what they do already. So you play a regular season and you play your conference championship games, and then you have the committee rank the teams, and then you play 1 through 16. He was even like, that's it. Like, not even spots for conference champions. Now, that part's not going to happen.
Right.
But on the heels of that, it did seem today, Elijah Campbell, and we may learn more tomorrow as a full recap from Destin comes out, from the different writers that are down, and all the big writers. Andy's down there, Heather Dinich, Ross Dellinger, Ralph Russo. They're all down there this week. 5 plus 11 seemed to gain some traction. And again, no automatic qualification spots. But Lane, and let me read y'all what it would have looked like. Elijah and I had fun with this a little bit earlier today. Number 1, Oregon would have played number 16, Clemson.
That'd been a fun first-round game.
And then number 9, Boise would have been at number 8, Indiana. So those two winners would have played each other. Then on the same side of the bracket, number 4, Penn State would have hosted number 13, Miami, and number 5, Notre Dame would have hosted number 12, Arizona State. So again, they would have played. Then on the top of the other side of the bracket, number 2, Georgia would have hosted number 15, South Carolina.
We would have gotten the Carolina-Georgia game anyway.
Dude, if Carolina and Georgia played in a playoff game, I don't care where they played. Sanford Stadium, Williams-Brice Stadium, anywhere else. Hawkins Stadium over in Irmo. That'd have been fine. But that would have been awesome. Georgia versus Carolina. And then in the 10-7 game, it would have been Tennessee hosting SMU. The 3-14 game would have been Texas versus Mississippi in Austin. And number 6, Ohio State hosting number 11, Alabama. So that's what could have been 16 school bracket if Lane Kiffin had it. And remember, in this case, Boise was ranked ahead of both Arizona State and Clemson. So Boise would have been just fine as a 5th conference champion. Again, Lane basically said just rank them. I don't know if Boise or any other, I think this year a lot of people are looking at James Madison as a big-time opportunity. Yeah. I could see at some point, a Georgia Southern one day or an Appalachian State or an East Carolina or a Memphis having their opportunities as well.
With Memphis's resources, they will one day. Yes.
But you got to, but again, Boise was legit top 10.
Yeah.
They weren't artificial top 10. They were artificial top 4, but they weren't artificial top 10.
That's a team whose only loss came to the number 1 team in the country by 3 points.
Yeah.
On the road.
In Oregon. Yeah.
With a running back who shredded records.
Yeah. GT went for like $150 that night, right? Maybe more. So, Boise was legit last year, man.
That was a really good team.
Yeah, they were good. They were good. So we'll see. But today, the coaches have met in Destin. Brian Kelly, Sam Pittman, Shane Beamer, amongst those who have spoken. And, Shane, they said, in Brian Kelly's words, they want an SEC Big Ten challenge, but that maybe the commissioners of the two leagues don't want it, according to what Heather Dinich said. Shane Beamer at the podium, and I'll just paraphrase, said, look, we got to look out for the Carolina-Clemson game first, but Shane has come on air with Elijah and me and said, hey, if everybody's doing it, I want to do it. And again, I have commended South Carolina's schedulers for what they have done of late. I know it's been a while since they announced the Carolina-Virginia Tech game, which comes up this season. But just to remind all of you, in the next 6 seasons beyond this one, so 26 through 31, Carolina has home and homes scheduled with Miami, North Carolina, and North Carolina State. And that's obviously in addition to playing Clemson. They've also got some games in there with App State and ECU, by the way, too. So I like what Carolina's doing. I still want to see the FCS teams removed from everybody's schedule. But, I may not get that at this point in time. But I am glad, I'm encouraged, Elijah Campbell, to hear the coaches of the SEC, whether it's 16-0 or whatever majority, but if
15-1.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, Mark Stoops said no.
If it comes out that they voted on that, like a scheduling thing to add an extra conference game and like
I don't think they will. I don't think we'll get it.
And they say, yep, it was a 15-1 vote. I would bet so much, an irresponsible amount of money to who that one is.
Yeah, I would too. But I don't think we'll get that. I think it's more, again, of a aye, nay, like they do across the street on most things.
Right.
But Brian Kelly, Sam Pittman saying that's what we want. So I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
I love it when the Sam Pittmans of the world say it. Because Arkansas they're not a juggernaut.
No.
But Sam Pittman knows, football guy.
And he said, Sam Pittman said, too, this is what fans want. This is what TV wants. Yes, it is.
And it makes your team better.
Yeah.
It will naturally make your team better.
And yes, some people are going to lose. We had a caller earlier. Somebody's going to lose that game. Yes, I know. It's sports.
That's the best part about
Still
sports.
a better game.
Yeah.
Still a better game.
Well, you've eliminated ties from the sport. Yes, someone will lose.
That's right. That's the drive around the SEC for this Wednesday. Jay versus the Internet and some poll results coming up. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the postgame show here on a Wednesday. Can I pat myself on the back again?
You absolutely should.
I did.
That was a hard pat.
I am
Mike's
I'm a little under the weather today. I got up this morning, and the second thing I did was get angry, because the first thing I did was realize that I'm getting a cold or something. I was on a couple of airplanes in back-to-back days last week, and I can only assume that's where I may have picked up some type of mild bug or
I would say
virus.
it absolutely is. Yes.
Or just in
Fair assumption.
or just in a really busy international airport. So whether it was on the airplanes themselves or at Reagan, I don't know. But did I tell you, by the way, I had to y'all, any of you that travel a lot, and if you, especially if you live in Columbia, you know, we're fortunate in Columbia that not just Charlotte and Atlanta, but like with direct flights. But, you know, New York, like you can get a direct from LaGuardia. You can get a direct from O'Hare. You can get a direct from Philly. You can get a direct from Reagan, from Dulles. So you got, you know, some of those. But, you know, you might have to bounce around like the various regional areas of the airport. I got my gate changed 4 times while I was at Reagan.
Ooh.
I went from D to E to D to E.
You're being
The terminal, that is, you know. Yeah. And I was like, man, I hope they don't like have me on the TSA video going like, what is this guy doing? You know, just why is he stalking the airport? I did think that once. I was like, they don't think I'm doing something wrong, do they? I was like, I can prove it. I have my
Hey,
app.
airport, you're freaking me out as much as I'm freaking you out right now.
So, but I made it, man. My throat is getting there, but I only have a few minutes left. So let's do Jay versus the internet, and you do most of the talking.
Yes. So right now, here are our standings updates as a two.
No, we don't need that.
Standings,
I'm doing horribly.
The internet is at 14-10. Good job, gang. You guys are doing really well. Jay is at 7-17, 7 games back, and I regret to inform you as well, Jay, that if your goal is to be the Colorado Rockies, you might be failing at that too. They're 9-46, so you're gonna have to go on an absolute tear to meet that. But number one for tonight,
It's a really bad futility.
it
at that
is. That is hilariously bad. The Thunder at home, 8.5-point favorites against the Timberwolves. Timberwolves trying to fight to stay alive in the Western Conference Finals.
I want those points. Again, I'm not a gambler by trade, but when it comes to things like this, you know, it's not any money lost. I want those 8.5 points. So give me Minnesota plus the points.
And with a pretty large margin here, 75% of our voters on Twitter say Timberwolves also plus 8.5.
All right. That's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of points for a playoff game. That's a lot of points.
Now, the Carolina Hurricanes also, like the Minnesota Timberwolves, fighting for their playoff lives tonight, but they're going to be at home taking on the Florida Panthers. Do they extend the series?
No, Panthers are going to win in Raleigh.
Jay says the Panthers, and with a close 60 to 40% chance, or not percent vote, the internet says the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay. All right. So
I like your odds there. I think the Panthers take a club to them tonight.
Okay. Yeah,
That team's a juggernaut right now, especially on the road.
Listen, all my hockey things have basically been guesses all year anyway, because, you know, my hockey knowledge is limited. Again, you really kind of pulled the rug out from me the other day when you told me that Messier, Gretzky, and Fuhr no longer play for the Edmonton Oilers, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize that.
Not only did not play for the Oilers, Mark Messier won a cup with somebody else.
Yeah, with the Rangers. Yeah. That was
decade later.
And that was even like the 90s, right?
It was in 94, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
So,
teams.
That's, you know, again, I know what hockey is.
You do.
I do. But I don't follow hockey.
Now, a game that was supposed to be tonight will be played tomorrow instead, so the game will be done by the time we get to Jay versus the Internet tomorrow. Braves, Phillies, over, under, just runs for both teams, 7.5.
Well, it's a doubleheader tomorrow.
Just one game. Game one.
Over.
Jay says over. And what was our closest one? 52% of the internet went under.
Uh-oh.
So we can be back here tomorrow, Jay Phillips, and you can cut that lead to 5 games.
Let's hope I'm here tomorrow.
Let's hope you're here
That's
tomorrow.
the
I will be
goal.
texting you for picks anyway. So
Appreciate
you will
y'all.
be getting-
Good stuff today. Seriously, good stuff today. All right, and one more live minute for me to talk to you. Let's hope I get through this. No, our good friends at Integrated Media ready to help you out. I've been saying for a while here now that it's a terrific time to get ahead of the football rush. If you have been thinking about upgrading or just getting a brand new home theater system, maybe you're building or remodeling this summer, or you want something outdoors. Listen, once we get sort of like, into that media days realm, and the calendar turns to August, the boys get pretty backed up when it comes to people say, oh, gosh, football season. I need my new home theater installed now, or my new equipment, replaced now. 803-948-8327. You call them now here in late May and get ahead of the football rush. That's the way to do it. That's right. That's an order. Now. Because if you've been wanting it, you'll get it. And then you just get bonus time with your brand new system. Right now. I love what I have. You'll love your new system, too. 803-948-8327. Call Integrated Media. Call now.